There's basically two schools of thought when you're trying to put your lectures online. I'm going to describe both schools of thought briefly.
Platforms meant primarily for reviewing content.
The first school of thought is that the platform is only going to be for review purposes, for study purposes. This is the way that I had always been doing it way back in 2006, well before COVID. I'd give a scripted lecture with a lot of PowerPoint stuff, have a lot of media involved in it, and then I would record it as I was giving it, do the lecture capture, and I would throw it up on the web. And I didn't care what it was like on the web because it was there on my site, number one. And number two, it was just for my students, the students who were taking the course. And the philosophy of design there was slide-based. You have all these slides and they're very detailed. And so a student comes and attends, and now they want a review. So they go to the site and they go through the slides. They click through them. And then if they don't understand one of the slides, they can click it and it will begin to talk. In other words, it flips over into an MP4 file, and they can see that part of the lecture. And so therefore, what you got was spot review. Only some of the video files, the MP4 files, would actually get reviewed. I got logs so I can see what it is that they're doing. And they were just pulling out what they needed. It was there as a resource, have a second look at what I'd said. Now, these sites also worked if someone didn't attend like one day. Let's say they have an absence. They missed a day. It's a live class in person, but somebody misses. Okay, so you can point them to the website. And so they could go and look at it. Now, if they did a sloppy job, which some of them would do, they would only look at the slides and then maybe hear an occasional slide talk, and they did not have a very good comprehension. In other words, those types of platforms were really for review-based, not for learning from scratch. Now, if they did do the job right, they could listen to the full lecture, and that's what they were supposed to do. That's what you tell them to do. But here's the problem. If you listen online to a live lecture, man, I have to tell you, it's boring. And it's not boring because your lecture was boring. It's boring because reproducing the lecture in video format makes it boring. Now, why? Well, it's because of the time that we live in. It's this YouTube thing. Who's got any patience? Everything is quick. Oh, this is an uptight thing. Give me this thing now so I can go and do something else. And so recording yourself live in the classroom isn't like music where you can be the Who and record yourself live, or the Grateful Dead and you record yourself live and somebody says, well, I've got a studio version and I've got a live version. It doesn't work like that, man. Live is going to have an element of boring to it. Plus, it's also dry. You misspeak. It doesn't actually reflect all that greatly on you as well. But nonetheless, as a review-oriented concept, these sites have worked well. Now, what I want to do is contrast that type of platform with another type of platform.
Platforms meant primarily for learning the content from scratch.
What began to happen is students began to take the entire course online. These are online courses. And at the beginning, I have to be very honest with you, I'm critical of these things. I've never really liked them. I don't like them because of what they're growing into. They're growing into these things where students are being forced to reply to things on a board. It's almost like they're giving them busy work. They're giving them assignments. Go read this. And somebody else is in charge of the intellectual realization, and you're just assigning tasks and making sure that there's replies or whatever. And it's like flying a plane where something else is flying the plane, and you're just pushing the buttons or something. Now, some of this has to do with my own bias. It's not a bias. It's a philosophy. I spend a lot of time trying to raise intellectual consciousness by the way that I assemble material. I need to see that there is realization happening. I need to see that the student is getting the connections. And the question is how do I do this in an online platform where I've put it into these video content? Well, here's the answer. It takes an incredible amount of video editing. The video editing is horrendous. How long it takes. It's not video editing, it's production, man. What you're doing is producing an interactive documentary. You're going to put your content, which is very different and significant. It's not bland or vanilla or basic. I mean, it might be if it's a different kind of class. For example, if we were teaching mathematics and someone's teaching Algebra 1 or something, there might be some standard things or rote things that they go through. But in a politics class on the presidency, in a politics class on the Supreme Court, in a politics class on American political development, what I'm bringing to it is not necessarily the same that someone else is bringing to it, and I'm proud of that. I want to advertise that. So what you're preparing in that situation is like an interactive documentary.
Now, when Reagan was proposing this, there was a lot of skepticism and a lot of opposition. Some of it came from within his own party. George Bush was running against Reagan in the primaries, and of course he lost. He would later become Reagan's vice president, very loyal vice president. But he made this interesting comment on the campaign trail. He called Reagan's plan voodoo economics, and he said that because he didn't think that the numbers would add up.
Voodoo economics. That's how candidate George Bush described candidate Ronald Reagan's policy during the 1980 presidential primaries.
You're getting the video well produced. It has a lot of different media. You're teaching with film. You're talking, showing a video clip, and then continuing the intellectual exploration. And you're also putting in these polls. That's the other thing. The platform stops. There's a poll. You answer it. You type in the text. Their answers show up. So it's interactive.
The deficit now is down to $185 billion. I want to ask a question. What caused the deficit to go down? All right, now the answer is Reagan has to pass an emergency tax increase.
You know, you ask them a question and then you teach them something. You ask them something and you teach them something. They have to participate. The edits are quick so that the video content moves quickly. And you also have logical pauses. There's pauses after you complete a certain segment, a certain train of thought. It might be something as big as a lecture, but maybe something within a lecture, there'll be a small pause, and they'll notify the student that we're now changing subjects and going on to something else. And do you understand that? And they click yes, and then it goes on. You want that kind of stuff in there, so they're not just having it on and going off and cooking something or watching TV. And you've got to have it so that they're being attentive. There's also, by the way, produced breaks. Like when we're done with the lecture, there could be like an intro and an outro. It's like a show. All right, now the title for today's lecture is To Infinity and Beyond. Now, where did we leave off? Last time what we were doing is we were talking about like a little jingo and, music and some images, something like the way a show would come in and come out. The Wittgenstein course that you're watching, so there's that kind of stuff. And that's to let them know that this particular iteration is ended. You can call it a show. If they keep going, music starts, and then we get right into it. And the other thing is you have to make it structured. These kids, I tell you, are taking the online classes. They will take a lot of advantage of you, I believe. At least maybe it's different depending on what tier you're teaching at. But I have to believe at all levels that some of these kids who sign up for an online class, they're expecting the work to be less or to be able to be arranged. You don't have to do much all semester except then you got to go and do this project. So the rest of it is like checking in. Yeah, I'm here or whatever. And so I'm against this. You need to have well-produced video content. It needs to be structured. By structured, I mean each week they watch this, they watch this on this day, watch this on this day. And you're taking them through the journey just like you would live. Now, this is important because in the age of COVID, now some of these kids are being thrown into this environment. They don't want it to begin with. They don't want to be online watching your dumb video presentation. So what challenges do you have? Well, number one, you got to work harder so that it is not a dumb presentation. You want to make it so that they can't take their eyes off of it. And you also want to have the files in very small bits, 2 or 3 minutes before something happens, before they have to click, 2 or 3 minutes, and they have to click. They have to be involved in it. And this is a synchronous platform I'm using. I don't like this idea of having a video conference call and everyone's there, and there you are, and I don't like it. I just don't like it. Live is live and studio is studio. And if you're going to do studio teaching, it requires what I call the interactive documentary style, heavy editing, lots of different media, good PowerPoint scripting, good visuals, multi-camera angles if you can get them, and you put it all together. By the way, you can't do that, unless you get some sort of break. You have to do like one class, an entire class, like over the summer. Take the summer off. Otherwise, you ought to be asked, some of you who are good at this ought to be asking your deans or whoever to get some sort of sabbatical for a semester so you can get a course really, really well edited for online presentation.